Imagine for a moment that it is the mid-1950s and you were looking for a new car. If you wanted something flashy, you went to Chevrolet. If you wanted a status symbol, you bought a Cadillac. But if you were a sensible, perhaps slightly boring person who prioritized reliability over everything else, you bought a Pontiac. Back then, Pontiac was the grandma brand of General Motors. They were dependable, sure, but they had all the charisma of a damp wool blanket. They were known for their silver streaks, those chrome bands running down the hood, and a reputation for being the preferred choice of retired schoolteachers. But in 1956, the boardroom at GM decided they'd had enough of being the sensible choice. They handed the keys to a man named Bunky Knudsen, and in doing so, they unknowingly lit the fuse on the American muscle car revolution. Bunky had one goal: to take the old lady image of Pontiac and bury it 6 feet under. He famously said that you can sell a young man's car to an old man, but you can't sell an old man's car to anyone. To save the brand, he needed speed, he needed noise, and most importantly, he needed to win. The transformation didn't happen overnight, but it started with a single-minded obsession with displacement and airflow. Knudsen was younger and more aggressive than his predecessors, and he immediately began infusing the company's DNA with high-performance engineering. This shift first bore fruit in the late 1950s with the introduction of the 389 cubic inch V8, equipped with the legendary tri-power setup, 3 two-barrel carburetors sitting atop the manifold. This engine was a revelation. It wasn't just a street engine, it was a statement of intent. When a 389-powered Pontiac set a track record at Daytona with a staggering 131 miles per hour, the industry stopped laughing. Pontiac wasn't just in the race, they were leading the pack. But Bunky wasn't satisfied with just being fast. He wanted total dominance. He began recruiting the most brilliant, rule-bending minds in the business. He brought in Smokey Yunick, the best damn garage in town legend, to spearhead a NASCAR program. He teamed up with Mickey Thompson, the king of land speed and drag racing, to push the limits of what a Pontiac chassis could handle. By 1961, the stage was set for a showdown. Ford, Chevrolet, and Chrysler were all pushing engines past the 400 cubic inch mark, and Pontiac found itself in a displacement arms race. Shortly before the 1961 NHRA U.S. Nationals, Pontiac dropped a bombshell that would change the performance landscape forever. They announced a new option for qualified drivers, the 421 cubic inch Superduty V8. This wasn't something you just checked a box for at your local dealership while buying a station wagon. This was a purpose-built racing engine masquerading as a production option. Rated conservatively at 373 horsepower, it featured dual 4-barrel carburetors, a solid lifter camshaft, and high-capacity exhaust manifolds that looked more like headers than factory parts. To get the 421, you had to opt for the heavy-duty driveline, and it was primarily reserved for the Catalina and Ventura two-door models. This was the birth of the Superduty legend. Almost immediately, the NHRA realized that Pontiac was playing a different game. To keep the competition fair, they mandated that these engines had to be factory installed to qualify for stock classes. Pontiac's response? They didn't back down, they leaned in. For the 1962 model year, they integrated the Superduty program directly into the assembly line, creating what many collectors considered the most beautiful and pure performance Pontiacs ever built. Visually, the 1962 Catalina was a masterpiece of early 60s design. The stylists moved away from the bubble-top look of the previous year, opting for a sharper, more aggressive roofline that looked fast even when standing still. The front grille was flattened out, the tail lights were rotated, and the rear fins were refined, giving the car a distinct identity that separated it from its corporate cousin, the Chevrolet Impala. But while the stylists were making it look pretty, the racing department was busy making it light. A standard Catalina tipped the scales at over 3,500 pounds, not exactly a featherweight. To turn it into a world-class drag racer, Pontiac engineers began a radical weight loss program. They replaced the steel fenders, inner fenders, hoods, and radiator supports with stamped aluminum components. This alone shaved nearly 200 pounds off the front end, shifting the weight bias toward the rear tires where it was needed for traction. They throw out the heaters, the radios, and the sound deadening. In some extreme cases, like the famous Swiss cheese cars of 1963, they actually drilled large holes into the frame rails to subtract every possible ounce of mass. Under the hood, the 421 Superduty was a work of mechanical art. At its core, it was a stroker version of the 389, featuring a 4.09-inch bore and a 4-inch stroke. But the internals were where the magic happened. This engine was built to take a beating. It featured 4-bolt Nain caps, forged Mickey Thompson pistons, forged connecting rods, and a forged steel crankshaft. With a compression ratio of 11:1, it required the highest octane fuel available. The camshaft, designed by the brilliant Malcolm McKellar, gave the engine a radical, loopy idle that signaled to everyone within a 3-block radius that this was no ordinary commuter car. In 1962, they added high-flow cylinder heads with massive intake and exhaust valves, ensuring the engine could breathe at high RPMs. While the official rating was 405 horsepower, everyone in the pits knew that was a lie. Period tests by magazines like Motor Trend suggested the actual output was closer to 475 horsepower, and full race-prepped versions were likely pushing 500. This power was sent through a heavy-duty clutch to either a Borg-Warner 3-speed or the legendary T10 4-speed manual, controlled by a Hurst floor shifter. The Superduty Catalina was a force of nature, delivering 0 to 60 times in 5 seconds and quarter-mile runs deep into the 12-second range. This performance translated to total track dominance. Pontiac swept the 1962 season, with Fireball Roberts taking the Daytona 500 and Hayden Proffitt crushing the NHRA Winter Nationals. In a single year, Pontiac successfully shed its sensible reputation to become the brand for winners. However, this peak was short-lived. In 1963, General Motors issued a sudden, total ban on factory-supported racing. This retreat was driven by internal politics and an antitrust investigation led by Robert Kennedy, as GM feared their overwhelming success made them a target for government intervention. The Superduty program was dismantled overnight, forcing engineers to pivot from the track to the showroom. Yet the impact was permanent. Only 179 Superduty units were produced in 1962, with just 45 featuring the radical aluminum front end. These corporate rebellions on wheels laid the engineering groundwork for the 1964 GTO and the broader muscle car revolution. Today, they remain legendary icons of a brief era where raw power and speed outweighed corporate caution.